Golf Central on YouTube is brought to you by the new Paradigm Woods and Irons from Callaway.
Hi, I'm Whit Watson, and this is your Golf Central update. In Charlotte, North Carolina, this past weekend, Wyndham Clark finally broke through to win for the first time on the PGA Tour. Clark leading virtually throughout the week, finishing at 19 under par, a 4-shot victory over Xander Schauffele. And by the way, with the win, Clark gains entry to the Open Championship this summer. Denny McCarthy and Michael Kim also making it via the Open qualifying series. Clark speaking after his championship.
To be honest, when I lost in the Dominican this year, I was beginning to think that maybe I'll never win. I know that sounds crazy because I've only been on here 5 years, but I've had a lot of chances to where I was within 2 or 3 shots, either going into the back 9 or starting on a Sunday, and I always seem to fall short. And not only that, but seemed like I fell back in positions. And there was multiple texts and calls and times when I was so frustrated with people in my camp where I didn't think I'd ever win, and I was like, let's just stop talking about it because I didn't want to think about it. I said maybe that's just not in the cards for me. So being in the position this time, I was like, well, you know, we've done everything. We know what not to do. And so I really learned from those experiences, and I felt like today, you know, when I didn't have the best start early on, I just told myself to relax. I've a lot more holes. You can't win the tournament after the first few holes on a Sunday. So, you know, little things where in the past I would have gotten fast and quick, and already my mind's going forward. And so I stayed really patient and present. And I think that's what kind of calmed me down. And then ultimately, when I got into a groove, helped me propel to make the birdies and win this tournament. I mean, a lot of what would happen is I would get too amped up, and I would show a lot of emotion, which then makes it tougher for me to make good, solid swings. And, you know, I don't know if I would have made bogeys or a lot of mistakes, but I would have been way more uncomfortable, and it would have been even tougher. And that's what I felt like in the past. It always seemed so tough for me on Sundays. And today, I wouldn't let my mind go in that direction. And so I just kept reminding myself that, you know, I can play great golf, and I can play good golf on Sundays. And I didn't want to be the person that I was in previous Sundays in previous years, because that person, you know, he probably shoots 2-3 over today, or even more, and loses his head and gets mad out there and doesn't control his emotions. And so I was really happy with how I handled all of it.
The countdown is now on for the 2023 PGA Championship, heading to Oak Hill Country Club in Rochester, New York next week. And we've got you covered live begins Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. You think of Oak Hill, you think of a PGA Championship, you might think of World Golf Hall of Fame member Lenny Wadkins, who did win a PGA back in 1977, and he captained a Ryder Cup team at Oak Hill in 1995. Lenny Wadkins, a guest on Golf Channel's Golf Today.
Lenny, always great to spend some time with you. I read this story that before the 77 playoff at the PGA, you thought it might be a Monday playoff and not a Sunday playoff, and you actually had a beer before the playoff. What do you remember?
Well, it was, yeah. I had no idea it was a sudden death playoff, and didn't find out until I was actually going to the clubhouse. I thought ostensibly to go to the press room and chat, and a buddy of mine, Ed Sneed, who I had played practice rounds with, that actually all 3 practice days I played with Ed and Tom Weiskopf and Arnold Palmer in practice, our little money games. But Ed gave me a beer. I'm halfway through it, and the guy said, "Hey, by the way, you're on the first tee." I went, "Whoa!" So I gave a beer back to Ed. I didn't finish it, but I think I could have probably used it at that point in time.
Well, Lenny, you entered that final round back at Pebble Beach in '77, 6 off Gene Littler's lead. He led Jack Nicklaus by 4. You posted a number, then waited in the clubhouse having a beer. How much do you remember of the playoff? Because that was the first sudden death playoff in stroke play major history.
Yeah, I remember a lot. I mean, basically standing there by 18 to see what was going to happen. I remember Jack had a 15-footer at 18 to tie me, and I'm still thinking playoff Monday, and I'm not really pulling for Jack, because I'm thinking, you know, if I have to play Jack in a playoff on Monday here at Pebble Beach, where he's won 2 majors, that's probably not going to go really well for old Lenny boy. And I can't say I was pulling for Jack. Glad to see him miss it. Then actually, I watched Littler make his par. Then I headed up to the clubhouse thinking press room and ended up going to the first tee. Is where we had the playoff. The one thing that stands out that I remember is they had already taken all the gallery ropes down. So there are about 10, 15,000 people following just the two of us with no gallery ropes, completely out of control for all three holes. It was chaos. And the PGA did a pretty good job of managing it, given the circumstances. And it was pretty wild. I mean, we went 1, 2, 3, and that's where we went.
You made that putt on the third extra hole, and you jumped in the air. Lanny, how did winning a major championship change your life?
In a lot of ways, completely. I'd had a great start to my career and had some injuries and some surgeries. And at the time I won the PGA, I was actually a non-exempt player. I had a good enough year that I was going to be in the top 60 and be exempt going into 78. But all of a sudden, I won the PGA. I've got a 10-year exemption. That was what it was back then. 2 weeks later, I won the World Series of Golf. That's another 10-year exemption. And then in 79, I won the Players Championship, which was another 10-year exemption. So I was kind of set up, with those wins, but it really changed my career. When we went to the first tee, we were told by the president of PGA that, Don Padgett, hey, whichever one of you guys wins between me and Litt, we were going to be on the 77 Ryder Cup team and knock Al Geiberger off the team. So that was exciting, but it was kind of not at the forefront of our minds when we're going out for the PGA Championship.
Lanny, the PGA moved away from that sudden death format for playoffs back in 1996, and now the Masters is the only major championship that uses sudden death. Which format do you prefer? Do you like to see 2, 3, 4 holes or sudden death?
Well, Eamon, I probably would prefer more. Not only did I win one at sudden death, I lost one at sudden death in '87 to Larry Nelson, and it was over a little too quickly for my taste. Honestly, I would have preferred, since it's a major championship, I know they want to finish it on Sunday, but I would still, as a player, opt for 18 holes on Monday. I would love to have 18 holes to contest that and see if I could get a major championship one. If not, probably a 3 or 4 hole playoff would be preferable.
There are probably at least a dozen guys who play on the Live Golf League will be at Oak Hill next week. There's also an ongoing discussion as to whether or not any of them ought to be chosen to play in Ryder Cup teams. Do you have any issues with Live guys playing either major championship golf or Ryder Cup potentially?
Well, if they qualify for the majors, it's kind of like, and particularly the Opens, the U.S. Open and the Open Championship, I feel like, that those are open to anyone. So if you qualify for those, you should be in. As far as the Masters and PGA goes, that's up to those organizations. They're smarter in those areas than I am. I think it's a very tough call for Augusta having so many champions that are members of LIV. PGA has a few as well. So it's an interesting conundrum for those organizations. I think they're handling it the right way, probably. I don't think they should be involved in Ryder Cup teams. I think those are a separate deal and I really think I'm looking at a lot of, the bitching going on from especially the DP World guys, the guys from Europe. I'm not sure any of those guys they're all kind of past their prime. I'm not sure they were going to make the team anyway. So I'm not sure what their complaints are.